All right, this is a treat as we have a little bonus pod for you. Daryl Moose Johnston, who's going to be on the call for the Bears and the Saints, doing phenomenal work with Fox, phenomenal work when he was a player, phenomenal work with the UFL, which we'll touch on. Moose, thanks for making some time for us today. And look, we got controversy here in Chicago. Troy Aikman and Caleb Williams, what happened here? Can you do these walkthrough meetings with quarterbacks? I don't exactly know what went awry here, and I know that you obviously play with Troy, know him well. So and this beef is getting some attention here. So what can you tell us about what a normal week is when you get to talk to the quarterback? And did Caleb do Troy wrong? Does he owe him an apology?
Well, I do know that somebody owes me some paper because I was printing down all the articles, and if it wasn't about the new stadium, it was about Troy and Caleb in a little bit of a beef. So there's been times when the schedules haven't meshed in Chicago with Caleb. I'll be honest. We've had it happen to us a couple of times as well, and sometimes you just don't get the reconnect on the backside. So I think that's what happened. A miscommunication with the set time for the production meeting, and they don't connect there or at the facility, and then you're trying to scramble and kind of touch base and catch up on a phone call later on that day, and that's going to be difficult with both of those guys. I mean, their schedules, on the course of the weekend, getting ready for a game, are going to be pretty hard to find an open window, and that's why we prefer, to set that time and make sure everybody has it. We've got our questions ready to go. We get you in and out as quick as we can. Don't want to waste anybody's time. But it does help the broadcast. So yeah, there's been a few times during the course of my career. There's been a few notorious ones that would play the waiting game with you and see how long the Mexican standoff was going to be there.
Well, I guess
dare to share. That's some good stuff here.
Yeah, it's really good, and I think it's helpful. But I guess the question is for Bears fans, and obviously we want to talk about the Bears and Saints, and excited to hear your thoughts on what Ben Johnson is doing here in Chicago. But just to kind of piggyback off this, then, Bears fans obviously watching the game, we're very sensitive. We're going to always stick up for our team and our guys, and watching the broadcast. I think a lot of Bears fans were feeling like, hey, Caleb's not getting a fair shake here in terms of the call. And this is something that you do every week. And so, and then Caleb puts in an Instagram post, quote unquote, it was lucky, a little nod to something that Troy said on the broadcast. So I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, how hard is it to call a game? Is there ever a time where you have like maybe an internal bias or anything like that, where you have to kind of separate the two while you're calling the game versus maybe what you think about somebody behind the scenes? Not saying that's how Troy is, but I'm just kind of curious about that psychology and how you approach things.
No, not at all. I've done Cowboy games. I did a Cowboy game when the Eagles beat them 41-21. There's not much I can say in a game like that that's very positive about the Dallas Cowboys. So you have to make sure that you keep your integrity in check. Fans are smart nowadays. There's a lot of information out there. They understand the game very well. And you can't be telling them something that they're not seeing. So yeah, there's no favoritism. There's no leading towards a team. There's no criticizing a player. That's the last thing you want to do, because, as we talked about earlier, that's an opportunity for you to be able to have an interview with some of these guys and get some information that's probably not out there in the standard areas where you're going to find that information. So there is no bias towards the game. There is no criticism towards the player. What you're trying to do is maintain your integrity. Now you have to understand, and I run into this problem a lot as well, because Troy was my quarterback. And so that's my bar. That's my standard, is a 3-time Super Bowl champion and first ballot Hall of Famer. That's a high bar. And so I think Troy, probably holds everybody to the standard that he had as a quarterback. And if you're not making the throws that you need to make, he's going to tell you the facts and what you're seeing. But I think the big thing is, and we run into this a lot, what is said on air and what is heard sometimes is very different. I think that's something that everybody that works in this business has to understand and come to terms with. I've seen, people respond to something that was said, and then when you go back and look at it, that's not even close to the actual words that were being spoken at the time. So I think that it's one of those situations where he's being honest. He's got a high standard of the quarterback position. And truth be told, one of the things that Ben Johnson has talked about where he would like to see Caleb Williams take that next step is accuracy. And I think that was the one area where Troy was being a little bit critical.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And then I want to maybe circle back one more time on this, just what your process for getting ready for a game. But what are you seeing specifically, Moose, with Caleb and the accuracy? Do you it's the graphics been making up the most inaccurate throws in the NFL, and yet at the same time, I think it's pretty obvious that Caleb is getting better.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, we had a number of Bears games last year, and when people were being critical of him, we did a little reel in one of our games of some of the throws that he'd made during the course of the season of the games that just we had done. So that's not, the course of the games all season long, but just the ones that we had done. And there's some throws in there that the majority of the quarterbacks in the NFL can't make. And a lot of them were on the run. And that's one of the areas where Caleb himself said he needs to get a little bit better. So, he can make every throw, but I think the one area that he could take a step is making the easy throw. Those are some of the ones that I think Ben Johnson would like to see a little bit more improvement in, because he has the ability, he has the skill set to make any throw that's out there. One of the things that Ben talked to us today when we visited with him was, just the arm strength to be able to make that outside throw to the wide side of the field. He watches it, and there's not a lot of guys that can throw the way he throws that ball. So, there's some great stuff that's there, but then at other times, it's an easy check down and it's off location. And you hear, I think the big topic this week was the ability to run after the catch, right? The ball that you can run with. That's another one where the location and the accuracy has to be defined when you're inside 10 yards and it's a crossing route on the move, that it's out in front and the player doesn't have to stop or reach back. He's able to, just kind of make that catch in stride and continue down the field. So those are just areas that he's going to continue to improve in and get better. But those are the ones that everybody's focusing on right now.
Is your perception with Ben, as far as Caleb's concerned, do you think he came to Chicago for Caleb? Or do you think he just really wanted to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears and he believed in Caleb, but if it didn't work out, he'd figure it out along the way?
I think there's probably a number of different reasons that all came together. Number one, probably being in the division, knows Detroit well, knows Minnesota well, knows Green Bay well. It's going to be an easy time for him, getting ready for his divisional opponents because of how familiar he is. He does have a number one overall draft pick as his quarterback that he's going to get an opportunity to work with. I think everybody knows the challenges that Caleb went through last year with just all the change that was around him. Kind of some of the issues he's had with the supporting cast. So, nobody really truly knew what that upside was. And Ben Johnson had done a really nice job with Jared Goff, even though he got Jared Goff at a later stage in his career and maybe set in his ways on certain things. I think one of the big things for Ben Johnson is the fact that he can really still have an impact on how Caleb's going to mature and grow as a quarterback. And that's going to be exciting. I'm sure looking at the defensive side of the ball and some of the pieces that were in place over there, the commitment that they had made in the offensive line, and he was going to improve on that. That was going to be one of the big things because we saw that in Detroit and what they did in Detroit. They built that team around their offensive line. So, he's going to come in and the pieces that are in place there, and then he's going to add to that the way they did in the offseason. So I just think it's kind of one of those things where it's all the pieces are in place, right? It's Chicago. It's the Bears. It's a storied franchise. You're in your same division. You've got a number one overall draft pick at the quarterback spot going into his second season when his first season was extremely bumpy with all the change around him. So I think that there was a ton of positives with the opportunity to come to Chicago, and you just can't say no to that.
Yeah, and I know Bears fans are very grateful that he didn't say no to that, because so far what we've seen through training camp and here to start the year, it has been a breath of fresh air. I know Chicago Bears fans have been waiting a long time for a coach like this. What have you seen here through these first 5 games? Because for us, there's an old moniker, or at least an ongoing moniker every year. This just feels different. And sometimes we're trying to tell ourselves that. But here we are again at this point, like after the bye week, the way they responded against Washington, and it just feels different. And it's like you almost don't want to say it because you don't want to jinx it. But at the same time, what we're seeing in front of us is extremely exciting. And I'm just curious what you're seeing from Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I see him with the ability to create the belief in the team that if they do the things that they're supposed to do, they're going to be in the game at the end. And then the big thing was, having some experience in how to close a game out, how to find a way to win. And I think that's the biggest skill that he's already created belief in at this stage of the season in his first year. How many times last year did we see Chicago with an opportunity to win a game and the opposite would happen? They would find a way to lose it. And that's a huge step from a mental perspective. So he's checked a huge box there. You can just go back to 3 weeks. Dallas is probably their best performance all around that they've had this season. Then they're out in Las Vegas and you find a way to win that game with a touchdown drive and a field goal drive. And then your defense holds on and special teams blocks a field goal attempt to win the game. Last week, it's complementary football. It's the defense forcing a turnover. It's the offense putting special teams in a position to kick a field goal that wins with no time left on the clock, which was really, really impressive because that's one of the hardest things to do in the NFL today is to be able to get to the point where you've given yourself an opportunity to win the game without leaving enough time for the opponent to come down and take that away from you. So I think the last 3 weeks, you've just seen really good complementary football, during the course of the game and a really, really good performance against the Dallas Cowboys.
So do you look at the NFC is so jumbled up here, Moose. So I don't know how you handicap it, but do you look at the Bears as a 3-2 team that's putting it together early and who knows how high they can go? Or is it more like, they could easily be 1-4 and I got to see a lot more before I actually would have any belief that they'll really be in the playoff hunt when it comes down to it, in November, late December.
Yeah, probably, kind of maybe a season 1 Brian Daboll, the New York Giants. All of a sudden, you're exceeding expectations. You get into the playoffs and you get that first win, and then you kind of get brought back down to earth by Philadelphia. We saw Dan Quinn do it last year in Washington. You get on a roll and you start to have that belief and you're playing clean football. They're taking the football away. They're doing a lot of things really, really well that are important in the game of football, especially from the complementary standpoint. So I think there are a lot of positives, but the biggest thing is they're finding ways to win the game. They've got an interesting upcoming schedule. What do they do through those 4 games? I think that's going to be, kind of telling on what this season's going to be, because it will get difficult, right? I mean, they're in a very challenging division with the other guys out there, Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over these next 4 games and what they can do with the momentum that they've generated at the early part of the season.
Yeah, I told myself I wasn't going to do the playoff math looking at the schedule, when they started the way they did and just kind of embrace the development of the Ben Johnson era. But after beating Washington, I'm with you. I'm looking at these next 4 games and saying, hey, if they can find a way to go 3-1, they have a real opportunity to put themselves in a playoff chase. And that would be really exciting for Bears fans. I think the other thing we're all waiting for here in Chicago is how they're going to figure out the tight end position. Every week, it seems like the Bears take a step, in things they need to clean up. Last week on Monday night, it was the run game. And now we're all kind of looking at Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet and saying, when are these guys going to get involved? I think Cole only has 8 catches on the year. Colston had an injury that kept him out a few games. He returns, isn't really getting the football that much. And we're all watching Tyler Warren, have such a great rookie season. So I'm just curious from your perspective, like the patience that we need to have with Colston Loveland and what you see in him as a player and an opportunity in Ben Johnson's system to potentially be a guy like Sam Laporta was for him in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it's not fair to look at what Tyler Warren's doing in Indianapolis and then, why did we go Colston Loveland when he was there? It's a fit. Your personnel department does all that work in the offseason. They liked him as a fit for that offense, after talking with the coaches. So, time will tell. But I think the point you made at the end of that was the biggest one, right? He's found a way to get Sam Laporta, involved in the offense in Detroit. And it takes time. It takes time for the guys to get comfortable. It takes time for them to find their way into the offense. It took me 3 seasons before I really felt like I'd found my place. And Sometimes it's, the addition of a new coach. When Norv Turner got there, I just felt I fit better into Norv's system than I did into David Shula's system. And that has a big impact on your confidence, and that has a big impact on how you're playing in the game. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, but he'll find his way. I just think, it's also a little bit to do, if you go back and look at it, what was it, 21, 22, 23, Cole Kmet, he's averaging, over those 3 years, over 60 catches a season. Last year, he's down 45, 47, somewhere around there. And right now he's trending at below 30, if you extend it out to the 17 games. So for some reason right now, Caleb, his eyes are not taking him that way. He's not winning his matchups. The play is designed to have somebody else as number one. There's going to be a number of different reasons, why it happens. We hear it with takeaways. Once they start, they come in bunches. And I think sometimes that's the same thing for receivers. Once they get that one good game under their belt, all of a sudden that confidence goes up. The quarterback finds ways to find them a little bit more frequently, and you start to see those numbers come back in line.
So let's rewind back to the quarterback then, as we talk about just, getting the tight ends the ball. Ultimately, this, to me, it sort of comes down to, can the Bears get to playing on time? Is there any quarterback moves that you could think of where he's supremely talented, moves well, cannon arm, was used to playing in the gun in college, didn't have to do everything he's being asked to do, and all of a sudden it sort of clicks and, okay, now I can do exactly what Ben Johnson, in this case, his NFL offense, would run. Like everyone looks at Baker right now. It took him, a long time. And now if you voted, I think Baker's the MVP of the league, and the Bucs are a Super Bowl contender. So I don't like as far as expectations for what Caleb could be what's possible for Caleb in the short future here. Like, what do you see?
Well, I think you go even more beyond Baker. You've got Baker Mayfield. This has been a topic that our group has been talking about during the course of the start to the season with some of the guys, because we've been able to talk to them. Number one, Daniel Jones. We've had the Colts twice. So there's another one. Sam Darnold. There's a number of them. So there's a lot of timing and circumstance that goes into that. For Chicago, this is happening early on. You've got Caleb Williams united and going to have the opportunity to grow and work with Ben Johnson as his play caller. And, Baker didn't have that opportunity. Sam Darnold didn't have that opportunity. Daniel Jones didn't have that opportunity. You could even throw Mac Jones in there. We had San Francisco earlier this year. You forget how challenging the start was for Mac Jones. And now that you see him out with Kyle Shanahan working in that system, you start to see the Mac Jones that we saw his rookie year when Josh McDaniels was his offensive coordinator. And in that quarterback class, he was the only guy with a winning record and went in and won a playoff game. So it really tends to be, in my opinion, the fit with the quarterback and the play caller. And sometimes that's not perfect in the beginning. And then, like we talked about with confidence and the fit and how you feel, you start to press. There's a lot of things that can go on. But we've seen three quarterbacks over the last two seasons get into different places and just excel. And then Baker Mayfield, he spent, a couple of weeks out with the Rams and with Sean McVay, and then he gets into Tampa and he's working with Dave Canales, and then he's got Liam Cohen. He gets around some good people that kind of get him in the right place mentally. He believes in himself. He's always had that swagger to play the position, which is important. But I think we've seen the same thing with Daniel Jones and also Sam Darnold. So those are different stories. This is year two. This is, like you guys said, everybody's excited in the city of Chicago and Bears fans to have Ben Johnson there as the head coach to groom Caleb Williams and trying to get him to the level of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's a good fit, on both sides. And, just over the last couple of seasons, seeing the difference that a change of scenery can make, and whether that's the quarterback leaving, going to somewhere else, or somebody else coming in and taking over, where that quarterback was.
So you're on the call here on Sunday at Soldier Field, a noon game for the Bears, and so I'm curious, just from the homework you've been doing this week, in terms of what Bears fans can be looking for against the Saints. Like, what should we be looking out for? Because we're all trying to figure out, I don't know if the Bears have earned the term of being in a trap game yet, because they have a lot to prove as an organization, as a team. But at the same time, they've won 3 in a row. they're feeling themselves a little bit. Everybody's going to pick the Bears to beat the Saints. So what should we be looking out for to keep our guards up, as the Bears go on to take on New Orleans here?
Yeah, it's an organization that's going through a pretty substantial change, right? Kellen Moore is the head coach, different offensive scheme, different defensive scheme, different special teams. So there's a ton of change in New Orleans. Yeah, the worst record in the NFC at 1-5. The way that Chicago is finding ways to win, they're in that process of still finding ways to lose. They've played close games. They had the one blowout in Seattle, I think, and just a special teams meltdown. So I don't like when people say we're better than our record says we are. Well, if that was true, you'd have a better record. So for me, yeah, they're not somebody you want to look at and just do a little surface bit of homework. You better dig into it a little bit. And the Bears staff is going to make sure that these guys know exactly who they're playing. I think you'll be impressed by Spencer Rattler. We were in week 2 against San Francisco. They have Alvin Kamara. They have Chris Olave. Taysom Hill just got back in the lineup healthy. Fabian Moreau just got back into the lineup healthy. Those are 2 guys that if you've seen the Saints are good players. They have Cam Jordan. They have Carl Granderson. They have Demario Davis. They have Alante Taylor. They have a lot of good players, on their side of on both sides of the ball that are good players. It's coming together. I thought something that was said when we talked with everybody today from the Bears, that the timing of the bye was perfect because, you're 4 weeks in, it's new systems. Okay, let's take a step back and see where we can get better, see why this area is not performing at the level we thought it was going to. So, New Orleans hasn't had that time yet, but I think that's why you see some of the choppiness because everything is brand new and they're still learning and they're learning on the fly. They haven't had that opportunity to have that bye week and take a step back and really kind of dig into the details.
Yeah.
Ben says that he doesn't give away anything in these meetings, that he's very professional, but did you get something out of him, Moose, that you could share with us? We got the game plan over there?
No, he's a little bit guarded, but he was good. I thought that one was really good about, why they saw, kind of the best output they had in the run game. And he said a lot of it was, working on the double teams. He likes the offensive line. He's a big fan of Darnell Wright, really respects him playing through that injury. But I think that was the biggest thing. And he said, the run game takes a long time to come together. And it does. If you watch a game, the quarterback and the wide receiver, 2 of the 11 can have an outstanding performance on one play and turn, a dead play into an explosive touchdown. In the run game, that usually doesn't happen. I mean, you never really see that solo effort or, 2 guys that are able to take a dead run play and turn it into an explosive. You've got to have 7, 8 guys of the 11 really functioning at a high level. So it just takes that run game a little bit longer, to kind of click. And it was interesting to hear that he saw a noticeable jump, last week, and he felt a lot of that was the movement that they were getting on the down guys. And that was one of the big reasons why he thought that they were very effective inside and then on the outside as well.
Did you talk to Caleb?
We're going to talk to him here later this afternoon.
Okay, well, then we'll let you get to that. But before you go, Moose, tell us what's going on with the UFL right now. You're I believe your title is the Executive Vice President of Football Operations. I have that right? Is that
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, look, I mean, when I was growing up, there was this Chicago Blitz team, and I was, that was fun back in the day. That's a long, long time ago. But where are you guys right now, and like with your partnership with the NFL, and how pleased are you with the way it's gone as far as getting players to the league and all of it?
Yeah, a lot of change this year. We've got a new minority owner coming in. There's a new vision. We're moving into smaller stadiums, so it looks more appealing to the eye on TV. Instead of having all those empty seats that we've had in some of our bigger stadiums, still working to get the fans to buy in and come to the game. I think the broadcast on television is really, really well done. We push the envelope with technology that we use. I think that comes across and is very interesting to the viewer on television. We've got great broadcast partners with Fox and ABC, ESPN. So there's a lot of good things in place there. We've sent a number of guys up into the NFL, over the course of the time, over the last 4 years. We've got some Pro Bowlers up there. We started out with a lot of the specialists, and now we've kind of moved into, some of the guys on the down line, especially on the defensive side of the ball, some wide receivers, Jalen Redmond, who's somebody that everybody in the NFC North is going to be familiar with, a defensive tackle from the Minnesota Vikings, came via the Arlington Renegades. Cavante Turpin with the Dallas Cowboys, who's been a Pro Bowler. Brandon Aubrey, who's been a Pro Bowler. So we've sent some young guys back up into the NFL, and they've done a tremendous job for us. So it's just giving these guys an opportunity that maybe the timing, what we talked about with the quarterbacks, the timing and the fit wasn't right for them at the place that they were at, and they kind of got lost in the shuffle. And this has given them another opportunity to have that platform again and get another shot to stay in the NFL. I
love it. Guys get an opportunity, willing to believe in themselves, and then who knows what happens. It's awesome. Absolutely. Moose, you're awesome. Thank you. We can't wait to hear you on the call on Sunday, and obviously, rooting for a great game, great broadcast, and for the Bears to keep them going. I know.
Yeah. Bears fans will be listening closely to how you call this game on Sunday.
I'm a fullback. I'll be critical of the running backs and stuff like that. That's where my eyes will be.
Well, we appreciate your time.
All right. Take care, guys.
Yes, sir.